Good day to you, Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you so very much for joining us again this week. I know some of you are still talking about last week's program and how informative it was and how much information we gave you. Well, today's program is also based on, once again, information giving. Of course, unlike last week, you're not going to hear much from me this week. What I plan to do is to give you this week's post-cabinet press briefing. Of course, that is usually hosted and facilitated by the Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. These post-cabinet press briefings usually come almost immediately on the heels of the government cabinet meeting that is usually held on Tuesdays. So those meetings are held on Tuesdays, and the post-cabinet briefing, the post-cabinet press briefing, are usually held on Thursdays. So yesterday, the Minister of State briefed the media and, of course, by extension, the general public on new things, old things, ongoing issues relating to what was discussed at the last cabinet meeting, which would have been on Tuesday, as I said before. There is a whole lot still going on in society. One of those matters, unfortunately, still pending. Well, the last reports we got that were prisoners were still at large. So there is still that call, because even though we don't want panicky society where you're looking over your shoulder and you're jumpy and you're edgy at everything, we still want a society that is going to be very aware. And this is whether there are prisoners at large or not. You should always try to be aware of your surroundings, because we always have to deal with unscrupulous persons in life. So it is always good to be aware. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to remind you to be very aware of your surroundings. Be a little more careful. Try not to be so loose. It is good, that sometimes we feel safe and we can be relaxed and take down some of the guards, but at the same time try to be as aware as you possibly can of your surroundings, and nothing is wrong with being skeptical in these days either. So that is just reminder to you. I know school is out, so some of the little ones are at home. They are enjoying the vacation. I don't know why we call it summer vacation in Guyana. We have two seasons, rain and sun, but some of them are out for the July-August vacation, which means every now and again you will see them on the road. When you think that, in your mind it is school hours, you would see them out on the road. So I'm asking drivers and motorcyclists to be very careful. Look out for those little ones. Some of them go off to what they call, I think, VBS school, or again, what we're dubbing as summer classes, and they have a reason to be on the roadways. So please be extra careful and look out for them, especially in the central parts of our city where traffic tends to get very, very heavy at certain times of the day. Remember, it seems as though we have a very strange rainy season this year. We're still somewhat in the rainy season. The roads are wet. Please be very, very careful when you are going to use our roadways. So those are just some things to remind you of. Coming back to the issue of prisoners at large, those are one of the things that Minister Harmon yesterday briefed the media on, so you'll hear an update on that. I know there's been much buzz about Dr. Rupert Rupnarayan, former Minister of Education, as to whether he has resigned from government, and there are reports that the resignation was withdrawn and so on. Minister Harmon also dealt with that in detail during yesterday's press briefing. I know usually when I bring to you the press briefings, you only get just about half of it or so, but today I have the time, because we have no guests today, so I have the time that you get that post-cabinet press briefing. It's in its entirety. So take a look at this. Of course, I always urge you to be informed, to keep watching and be informed. So here is yesterday's post-cabinet press briefing hosted by the Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. Take a look and, of course, be informed. This is Facing the Nation.
The post-cabinet press brief will be done covering matters which were dealt with at cabinet at this meeting held on Tuesday, the 18th of July, 2017. At that meeting, the Honourable Minister of Finance introduced a team from the International Monetary Fund, the Cabinet. He explained that the IMF had responded to his request for technical assistance and advice in relation to capacity building to manage anticipated revenues from oil and gas resources. The mission leader of the team informed Cabinet that Guyana had become eligible for assistance from the IMF under a donor-funded trust fund and explained that the team would make a scoping assessment of government's policy direction and meet with the persons and agencies that will be involved in managing revenues from the oil and gas sector. That assessment would enable the IMF to determine the areas in which assistance could be provided. A note providing the details of the IMF assessment and forms of assistance will be presented to the government at the end of the mission. The Honourable Minister of Finance reported to Cabinet about his attendance at a conference on the use of the Chinese renminbi in the Caribbean. Cabinet was informed that the discussions at the conference centered around the deepening of investment cooperation among China and the Caribbean, how the use of the Chinese currency could enhance trade facilitation, financing and banking relationships, and tourism. The Honourable Minister of Finance also informed Cabinet that an agreement had been signed with the OPIC Fund for International Development, OFID. OFID is an intergovernmental developmental finance institution established by OPEC, that is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, to foster financial cooperation between its members and developing countries. Guyana's relations with OPEC began in 1977 when it was known as the OPEC Fund. The signed agreement now paves the way for OPEC to make immediately available to Guyana up to $44 million in loans. The Honourable Minister of Public Security updated Cabinet about ongoing activities in the aftermath of the fire and prison break at the Georgetown Prison, Camp Street. The Minister of Public Security reported that facilities to assist with the accommodation of the displaced prisoners at the Lusignan Prison, East Coast Demerara, had been completed and were handed over to Guyana Prison Service. While work was ongoing to make the Georgetown Prison habitable once more. The minister stated that efforts to reduce the prison population through bail and the remission of sentences and to relocate and properly accommodate the prisoners that remained in custody had continued. He also stated that 2 of the prison escapees had been recaptured, while efforts were being made to recapture those who were still at large. The minister also reported that briefing sessions were held with the Private Sector Commission on the 14th of July and the parliamentary opposition on the 15th of July in relation to the fire and prison break. Cabinet was also informed that 3 of the injured prison officers had been discharged and were recuperating, while 1 officer remained hospitalized but was removed from the intensive care unit of the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. The annual report on audited financial statements of the Guyana Gold Board for 2016 was presented to the Cabinet by the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Cabinet noted the report and statement and approve for them to be laid in the National Assembly as required by law. The audited financial statement of the Guyana Energy Agency for the year 2015 and the audited financial statement of the Maritime Administration Department, MARAD, for the years 2004 and 2005 were also presented to Cabinet by the Honourable Minister of Public Infrastructure. Cabinet noted the statements and approved for them to be laid in the National Assembly as required by law. Cabinet approved the appointment of Her Excellency Mrs. Lillian Chatterjee as High Commissioner of Canada to Guyana. She has replaced His Excellency Mr. Pierre Giraud, whose tour of duty has ended. It is expected that the appointment of High Commissioner Chatterjee will strengthen the bonds of friendship, maintain the close collaboration at the bilateral, regional, and international levels, and expand the economic trade and business relations between Canada and Guyana. Cabinet approved the appointment of His Excellency Dr. Alfonso Monera Cavadia as non-resident ambassador of Colombia to Guyana. Colombia and Guyana, as you may be aware, established diplomatic relations in December 1970 and have in the course of those relations concluded a number of bilateral agreements, the most recent being for the mutual exemption of visa requirement for ordinary passport holders that was signed within the margins of the 47th General Assembly of the Organization of American States on June 21st, 2017. It is envisaged that the appointment of Ambassador Cavadia, who will be resident in Trinidad and Tobago, will enhance relations. Cabinet approved the request of the government of the Republic of Kosovo of Her Excellency Rudy as its non-resident ambassador to Guyana. Ambassador Rudy, who will be based in Panama, is the first to be appointed since diplomatic relations between Guyana and Kosovo was established in June 2012. After the International Court of Justice advised that Kosovo's unilateral declaration of independence did not violate international law. However, it was until July 7, 2016, that a memorandum of understanding between the government and Kosovo and Guyana was signed. It is expected that the appointment of Ambassador Rudy will provide the opportunity to operationalize the agreement of cooperation between Kosovo and Guyana. Guyana will participate in an Interpol-sponsored Week of Action for the Americas, a cyber surge operation. It's to be held in Bogota, Colombia, from August 28th to September 1st, 2017. The aim of this activity is to enhance the capacity of Interpol member countries to prevent, detect, and respond to cyber threats. Assistant Superintendent Jermaine Johnson of the Guyana Police Force will participate in the program. Approval has been granted for participation in a Federal Bureau of Investigation mid-level training course for law enforcement officers to be held in Miami, Florida, USA, from August 7th to 11th, 2017. The course is expected to improve the administrative capacities of participating organizations. Assistant Superintendent Chabinot Singh of the Guyana Police Force will attend the course. Approval has been granted for a representative of the Small Business Bureau, Ministry of Business, to attend the inaugural Caribbean Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises Conference to be held in Montego Bay, Jamaica, from July 19th to the 22nd. The conference, convened under the theme Collaborating for Caribbean Business Sustainability, has brought together private and public sector stakeholders from CARICOM and non discuss trade, finance, and policy matters facing CSMEs. The conference will finalize a draft policy document on Caribbean business sustainability and is expected that Guyana's participation will help in the development of our national micro and small enterprises policy and our national entrepreneurship strategy. Dr. Lowell Porter, Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Bureau, Ministry of Business, is attending the conference. Guyana will participate in a training workshop for the training for instructors in disaster management to be held in Miami, Florida, USA, from July 24th to the 26th, 2017. The workshop, organized by the United States Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, will give participants the skills and knowledge to train disaster management practitioners in their respective countries. Major Kester Craig, Deputy Director General of the Civil Defense Commission, will attend the workshop. Cabinet has approved participation in the annual student program for innovation in science and engineering that's being held on the campus of the University of the West Indies, Cayville, Barbados, from July 15th to August 13, 2017. SPISC, as it is popularly known, is an annual intensive 4-week engagement enriching program for Caribbean high school students who are gifted in science and engineering and are interested in studying and exploring careers in those fields. It is also intended to address the low number of Caribbean students pursuing advanced degrees in those disciplines, with the long-term goal of helping to diversify the economies of the Caribbean region by stimulating more technology-based entrepreneurship. Mrs. Min Wengong and Mrs. Fatima Karim, who were selected through the Caribbean Science Foundation review process, are attending the program. Cabinet has approved attendance at a seminar for economic and trade professionals from the Caribbean to be held in Hunan, China, from July 27 to August 9, 2017. The 2-week seminar for economic and trade personnel from Caribbean countries will offer a broad understanding of issues related to economic and trade matters in China and the Caribbean. Mrs. Naomi Adams Cancinali and Mrs. Abigail Welch, both Foreign Service officers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will attend the seminar. Cabinet noted the award of contracts as follows: for the provision of consultancy services for the development of a training course and training of trainers for improved instruction of mathematics in secondary schools, the Ministry of Education, for the sum of $85,610 United States dollars, contract awarded to Dr. Ernest D. O'Neill. For the rehabilitation of the Kumaka Marketing Center, Region Number 1, Barima Winey, a contract in the sum of $25,081,000 awarded to Aruka Investment. For the procurement of an electricity generator at Mabaruma, Region Number 1, Barima Winey, Ministry of Public Infrastructure, contract in the sum of $22,743,000 awarded to TELS Engineering Services. For the construction of Sparta Recreational Park and Regina Region Number 2, Pomeroon, Supernam, Ministry of Communities, a contract in the sum of $30,611,000 awarded to Puran Manman General Contracting Services. For the construction of a green park at number 76 Village, Quarantine, Region Number 6, East Berbice, Quarantine, the Ministry of the Communities, a contract in the sum of $16,759,000 awarded to 4A Engineering Enterprises. For the construction of Lethem Declaration Park, Region Number 9, Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo, Ministry of the Communities, for the sum of $21,697,000, contract award to Arkisoon Contracting Service. For the extension of distribution, water mains, and service connections from Philippi to Bengal, Region Number 6, Guyana Water Inc., for the sum of $28,267,000, contract awarded to LGS Barnes, General Building Construction and Civil Engineering. For the construction of a water catchment and installation of PVC distribution water mains at Chinapau, Region Number 8, Guyana Water Inc., in the sum of $29,954,000, a contract awarded to Alvin Charamutu Construction Services. For the supply of 60,000 insecticide-treated hammock nets to the Ministry of Public Health in the sum of $165,506, the contract awarded to Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. For the supply of medical equipment for the National Blood Transfusion Service, Ministry of Public Health, for selected items, firstly, in the sum of $19,493,000, a contract awarded to Intercontinental Pharma. And secondly, for selected items, for the sum of $5,104,000, a contract awarded to Western Scientific Company Limited. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, those are the matters that were discussed at Cabinet at its meeting of Tuesday, 18 July 2017. I now take your questions.
Sir, Adam Harris, Prime News. China and the use of Guyana, Jamaica, they had some problems there, and Grenada. But how widespread is China so that the whole Caribbean went to tempted the currency?
Well, the focus of the conference, as I understand it, was that where there was a large Chinese presence in any of the CARICOM states, that the bilateral arrangements between that state and China would be easier facilitated by the use of the renminbi. So I can't say that it is something that is approved all across the region, but the sense I got from the brief provided by the Minister of Finance was that it was to facilitate bilateral trade at this point in time. Maybe later on it probably will elevate itself to something else, but that is the direction in which the conference seems to have gone.
So Chinese coming to Guyana could come and spend their own money here. How does the central bank accommodate this with exchange rate and all that?
Well, I cannot provide you with all of the details as to how it will work. As you know, this is just preliminary. This was a conference to look at the issues, and at the appropriate time, once a decision is made, then the details as to how it will work will be fleshed out and be made public. By the leader of the opposition are purely speculative. If these things were happening in the early 2000s, then clearly his government or his party, his government, would have been in power and ought to have taken some action on that if, in fact, the report has any credibility whatsoever. As you also will be aware, while we were in the opposition, the leader of the opposition piloted a motion in the National Assembly for an investigation into what he had called the troubles. The motion itself was amended in some ways. But clearly what the leader of the opposition at that time, who is now the president, was calling for was an investigation, an inquiry into the troubles. But during that period of time, in the 10th Parliament, the government never acted on any of the resolutions which we passed in the National Assembly. So even though that is there on the record, there was slightly any chance that the government at that time of Mr. Jagdeo's party would have taken any action. But the president is resolved to have this matter investigated because we have to bring closure to the many issues which affected that period, to the many mothers, daughters, fathers, children, cousins who lost people during that period of time, that it must have some closure to that. And so, while it has not happened as yet, I'm sure that at some appropriate time, that there is going to be an inquiry to that period of time. And so I would say that the leader of opposition is speculating because he said he had the power to do it when he was in office. So let him stop crying now. That's one. The second has to do with the gangs you said are operating in the hinterland. We are aware that there were some gangs that were operating in Venezuela itself over some time now. There were credible reports of these gangs. In fact, there were reports of the Venezuelan military going after these gangs that were operating on that side of the border. What we don't have is any definitive information that the robberies which are taking place of the mining camps were done by Venezuelan gangs. But if in fact that is so, what I can assure you is that our police force will take every possible step to investigate and bring to justice those persons who are involved. And whether they be Venezuelans, Guyanese, Brazilians, or what, once a crime is committed in any part of this country, our police force will go after the criminals. and they have the full support of the National Security Committee and the agencies that are connected to the National Security Committee in their effort to ensure that law and order prevails in this country, in every part of it, so that the hinterland is no different from the coast. The reaches of the long arms of the law reaches to every corner of this country, every corner of the 216,000 square kilometers of Guyana. And wherever these things occur, our police, our law enforcement officers will go after these criminals.
Mr. Rajan Kaiser News. Minister Harmon, are plans in the pipeline to prepare Guyana's judiciary for the legal issues to arise from oil and gas? The second question is, what is holding up the establishment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
Well, two things. The oil and gas preparation of the judiciary. I believe that the judiciary is on what I will call an upward trajectory. Recently, we've appointed a new chancellor, a new chief justice. Only yesterday, we appointed another judge to the Court of Appeal and several puisne judges, 4 puisne judges. Insofar as the capacity is concerned of our judges to deal with these issues, it's something that requires training. And no country, as far as I'm aware, really becomes proficient in dealing with these matters unless there's some period of training in the specific areas of the law. Our judges are trained in the law, but there are some specific issues which will arise from this area of development, and clearly, our judges, I'm sure, will adjust to it. So I think that is one. Secondly, that the judicial officers are benefiting from extensive training locally and abroad. Only recently, I believe, the Chancellor and some other officers came back from abroad, and shortly, there'll be another set of judicial officers going abroad and training. So the training in the judicial service is an ongoing exercise. It's a continuous process. And really to say that they're not prepared for it, well, there's preparation taking place, right? In fact, the first statement I read to you about the presence of an IMF delegation here that came at the invitation of the minister. And the point we want to make is that in olden days when the IMF came, they didn't come at the invitation of the minister. They came because they were administering an IMF fund. And therefore, many times people were afraid when they hear the IMF is here. But now we've invited them to look at some of our processes. And they're looking at this and what they call a scoping mission and all of the areas of weakness in our administration. That is the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches. They will look at these things and advise us as to what should be done. And I'm sure that the judicial service, the judicial branch, they're not unaware of what needs to be done. And I believe that we have well-trained judges, well-trained attorneys who have now become judges that will bring that quality of jurisprudence and jurisprudential thinking to the issues and to make rational decisions when those matters come before the court for adjudication. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is a work in progress. This was one of the matters which was specifically focused on at this last IMF delegation that came to Guyana. As I said earlier, we are getting advice from several places, including Chatham House and some of the well-established fund management countries and agencies. So I don't think that is something that somebody can just dream up in one afternoon or in a month and say, well, okay, here it is. It is something that requires careful analysis, and I want to assure the Guyanese people that their government is doing what is best in their interest, that we will look at best practices around the world and apply it to our own local conditions.
So how do you react to Jagdew's comment that he can do it alone in a month?
Well, I don't react to that comment. Mr. Jagdew Mr. Jagdeo was always a superman, you know. He could do everything. But this administration, we are taking our time. We are trying to get things right because we believe in the interests of the people of this country. We have to establish these funds. We have to establish all of these processes in a sound way that can stand scrutiny for years to come.
Abina Rockcliffe, Country News. Good morning. Minister Harmon, you just spoke about the IMF. In its latest report, the IMF said that in order for government to secure maximum legitimacy, it is important that it places as much information out in the public domain and it is open to the media about key things relating to oil and gas. Yet, many Guyanese are complaining about a deficit of information relating to oil and gas. The media has been showing out lots. Government seems mum. Is there a specific reason for that, and can we expect a change soon?
Well, there is no reason to hide any information. Every single day in the newspaper, there is some statement or there's a report or something about oil and gas. Yes, the IMF team did speak about that. In fact, they felt what they said was that the way to build confidence in your governmental processes is to ensure that there's transparency. We believe in that. We agree with it. In fact, if you check in today's paper and yesterday's paper, you will find that a department under the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Extractive Industry, Guyana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, that they're having public hearings, public consultations all across the country, and they are getting advice. They are putting out the information, we're getting advice on these issues. So I would say that, yes, I agree with that proposal, with that position which is taken by the IMF. It is correct, and we are doing our best to ensure that the Guyanese people are kept informed at every stage along the way.
Okay. Secondly, there continues to be a perception of corruption. Transparency International continues to rank Guyana low on the corruption ratings. Recently, The Economist wrote an article about Guyana's government being far from strong. What are the active measures being taken to remove or minimize this perception of corruption?
Well, the corruption perception index, I believe, has moved in the right direction for us. It is nothing that says that we are more corrupt than we were before. In fact, all of the indicators point towards us having a better administration than was there previously. All of the indices that are there. Secondly, the question of perception of corruption is that it says it's a perception. We put out the facts. If there's a perception, we try to put out the facts to deal with that perception. But sometimes there's a big gap between perception and reality. And depending on where you stand, your perception becomes your reality. But as far as we are concerned, we're doing our best to ensure that our processes are clean, that there's transparency in what we do, and that wherever corruption is found, that action is taken against it. We have actually done so much in this administration to move us up the ladder. That I can say to you that if there's a perception, then it was there before. And we are now trying our best to work our way out of it. Under the previous administration, our ranking was far much lower. And we are doing several things to ensure that it is higher. In fact, for the first time in years, we presented in the National Assembly a half-yearly report on the state of the economy. It's going to happen again. For the first time in years, we have delivered 2 budgets in 1 year. For the first time in years, our budgets are being presented to the National Assembly in the year prior to the year in which spendings have to take place. All of these inquiries that we're doing are all geared at ensuring that any corruption or any perception of corruption can be corrected. But as I said, depending on your point of view, or depending on who's writing from what country, they will have a different view because of from where they come. But from where we are, the people who are here in this country, I'm sure that the majority, if not all, believe that we are doing a good job in this, as far as making this country a better place and a more accountable place for all Guyanese.
Alexis Rodney, The Evening News. Minister, could you confirm reports that President Granger has let go of 3 of his advisors? And if so, could you say why?
Well, I'm not aware that the president has let go of any advisors. What he has said is that he would wish to give his advisors more executive positions, but he hasn't let go of any advisor, and I can say that for sure.
Minister, just final question from me. Can you say if a request would be made for the extradition of Marcus Bisram, and can you say to the terms of reference for the next COI into the Camp Street unrest, if there will be one?
Well, yes. I think the Minister of Public Security has already made that public, that there is going to be a commission of inquiry into the fire and to the jailbreak. The first step that we took was to ensure that those recommendations which were made by the previous commission of inquiry, that we had a review of those and to ensure that the actions which were taken, that were short-term, middle-term, and long-term, that we were taking the short-term actions and the middle-term actions. The longer-term actions are going on right now, that is to say the relocation of prisoners, the fixing of prisons in different parts of the country. Those are physical infrastructure matters, but those are longer term. So yes, there's going to be an inquiry, and the minister at the appropriate time will announce the terms of reference for the inquiry. The first question was extradition for Bisram. Yes, we are actually, the Minister of Public Security has been in touch with the U.S. authorities on that matter, and I think that there is something that's taking place there. Okay, well, let me make, since this might be the last, see no other indication of any questions. Let me say this, that there's been some information in the public domain now about a resignation by Dr. Rupnarayan as a Minister of Government. What I want to say on that matter is that yesterday afternoon, Minister Rupnarayan met with the President in my presence and had a very fruitful discussion with respect to his portfolio. It was clear after that meeting that Dr. Rupnarayan will continue to serve as a minister in the government, as a member of parliament, and as a valued member of our cabinet. Dr. Rupnarayan's contribution to this country and his ability and capacity to continue to contribute is one which the President spoke about and was very happy that Dr. Rupnarayan has actually pledged to continue serving in the interests of all of Guyana.
So you just withdrawn the letter of resignation then?
Well, yes, that's right. That's correct, yes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Harman, on that same matter, in Samuel issue, could you say what were some of the issues ventilated by Dr. Rupnarayan which led him to submitting the resignation letter?
Well, I think there's something in the public domain already that he felt that his health situation was making it challenging for him to be able to contribute at the levels to which he expected to contribute. But the President gave him the assurance that the support which he needs to ensure that he continue to function in his ministry effectively will be given to him in that regard. Thank you very much.
Those of you who are joining and you're wondering what's happening on Facing the Nation today, of course, that was Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. Yesterday, he briefed the media. Of course, these post-cabinet press briefings are weekly. They come on the heels of the government ministers' cabinet meetings that are usually held on Tuesday. And he did give you a whole lot of information there, a great lot. That's for those of you who are now joining us. Also, I take this opportunity to apologize, and this time I'm apologizing on GPL's behalf. While the video was showing, there was a breakage because of load shedding. And those of you who are in the city, who are in the capital, you would have known that we've been having some power issues all day since about 8 this morning. So those of you who are now joining and you missed that and you're going to follow me on YouTube or on Facebook, the program will be definitely be uploaded in its entirety, but we'll try our best to edit out those glitches that occurred because of the blackouts that we've been having. And I take this opportunity to appeal to GPL. It seems that you're having a problem, so we trust that the problem will be rectified sooner than later, because when these things happen, it makes us look really bad and it inconveniences a whole lot of people. It's not only happening here at Channel 6, but even in various offices across this city would have been experiencing whatever it is that GPL. I have not seen a bulletin as yet from GPL for today, but they're clearly having some sort of problem when it comes to supplying power in the Georgetown areas. And of course, that started from this morning. Lots going on. It's almost time for me to wrap up today's program. Of course, I'm going to leave you a little earlier than usual today because there's no guests. And I know you got a lot of information there from Minister Harmon that, you need to let simmer. So you don't need much more from me. Those of you who follow our news, local news, you would have heard, and I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate those young ones, the robotics team. I think they went to Washington, it is, recently, and the headlines are basically that they've gotten 10th place. Now, for people who don't understand the significance of this, some people may be saying, well, 10th place is nothing big to shout about, but it is something really big to shout about. These young people, this is the first time we've entered something like this, and these young people would have been competing with big countries, 10 times larger than Guyana, and they are way ahead of us when it comes to modern technology. So it's wonderful. It really is. I'd like to say congratulations to that entire team. All those persons who continue to work and push them and contribute to their success, congratulations to you, especially the First Lady of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Her Excellency Madam Sandra Granger. She has been pumping a lot of resources into that team and all the other persons who are supporting. I was made to understand that the young people were welcome. I think they came in, if not last evening, the Wednesday evening, they came in and they were welcomed by the Honorable First Lady of our country. They were also welcomed by the Director of Sport, Christopher Jones. So congratulations to all those persons who continue to contribute to their success. We hope that you young people, you will pass on the knowledge you've learned, not the knowledge you've learned, but you would pass on everything that you've learned, including the skills, the new skills that you would have developed and so on. And we trust that it will help you to form, shape, and become very, very productive in your careers, especially if you choose to go down the same road in terms of your careers, because science and modern technology, we cannot, unfortunately, in today's world, we cannot survive without those things. So again, congratulations to you, and I trust that you will be a great inspiration for all the other young persons who want to follow in your footsteps and become a part of any robotics team or so. So once again, congratulations to you. Well, that is just about all the time I have for you. I know people are still asking about what is happening with the housing department. A few weeks ago, I did promise you Valerie Patterson, but the minister is currently waiting on some information so that when she comes to the public to speak to you, she will have all her ducks in a row and she'll be able to give specific information, especially in terms of when whether it be the homes, the condos, she'll be able to give you specific information the next time she appears. So again, those of you who have sent me your questions, have no fear. The questions will be answered once the minister appears here. As I said, she is still waiting on some more information herself before she comes to the public to tell you exactly what it is that you need to know. Because again, the government of the day understands the importance and the need to provide housing for all. We always preach, our mantra is providing a good life for all Guyanese. And if you don't have proper roofs, if you don't have a proper roof over your head, food on your tables and clothing on your backs, you cannot have that good life. Unfortunately, this is where I leave you for today. This has been Facing the Nation. I'm Malika Ramsey. Be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And of course, join me again next week. Goodbye.